I like that perspective. I don't care as a consumer where you start, and I really don't care where you finish. I just want to meet you where it's easy for you to see my brand, understand our story, and make a decision. And I think the more we can think through that sort of lens, the better off we're all going to do. And the challenges are, you might have a preference to steer them one way or the other, but you got to break down that sort of thinking and think through the customer's eyes first. I think forecasting is important. We all want to understand that consumer's journey and experience and have exceptional articulation. What are they doing? What's triggering them? What's turning them on? What's turning them off? Where did we lose them? Why?
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Decoding the Digital Industrial Revolution. I'm your host, Arvind Sarin, and today we're joined by a titan of consumer goods industry, a man who's not only grown million-dollar businesses, but also championed innovation and nurtured future leaders. He's navigated complex sales landscapes, revitalized underperforming brands, and secured partnerships with retail giants like Amazon and Walmart. But his passion extends far beyond the bottom line. He's a dedicated mentor and advisor, actively fostering the next generation of entrepreneurs. Let's give a warm welcome to Charlie Ninegar, the COO of DSS Games. Welcome, Charlie.
Arvind, nice to see you. Thank you for having me. That's a lot to live up to, but I appreciate the introduction and glad to be here.
Absolutely. No, this is something that I've been looking forward to, especially because of the nature of products that you sell. It is so fascinating, and I'm sure the audience is going to get a kick out of it too. So I want to hear your story, your early career in consumer goods, and then talk about DSS Games, what you do there, and what shaped your approach to business and leadership.
Sure. So today I'm the COO of DSS Games, and DSS Games makes what we call party games for both family friendly and also adult. And they're great. They're boxes, usually card sets, and the whole idea is to encourage communication, interaction. Put down the phone, sit with your friends, learn something new, have some fun. You don't really keep track of score. Who cares who wins? You just have a good time, and that's what we do best. And so that's what I do today. My background starts long ago. I came up through sort of the consumer goods space and actually lifestyle and even sport-oriented consumer goods. So I'm working for surf brands and snowboard and ski brands, and always in the sales channel. And as I grew my career and got to the executive level, I also started giving back a little, and I volunteer time as a mentor for young startup businesses in a space through a group called SDSI, San Diego Sports Innovators, and we help young businesses sort of scale, pivot, whatever they need to do to get off the ground and get going at 20 weeks at a time. So as we talk today, where I'm thinking from is this guy who grew up with consumer goods, sales first, now operating as COO, and also I'm thinking about how I mentor these young businesses that are getting up and off the ground and really have early acceleration. So yeah, that's where I'm coming from today. And again, thanks for having me.
Fantastic. That's amazing. And it's really commendable because I think the true happiness comes by these types of acts of service and, helping the future entrepreneurs and the younger people. I think that just brings so much joy because I also know there's so much energy that the younger people have because along the way, we were sometimes not taking as many risks, but I've noticed that the younger people, have this ability to just go at it and hit a lot of roadblocks and still keep going. But I think at times, people like us know a little bit too much to try on certain things, in being an entrepreneur. So that's awesome. Moving along, can you elaborate on a specific situation in which you use data and innovation to transform like a struggling sales operations and achieve some positive results there?
Oh, sure. I mean, that makes me think of a company I was at, called Nixon that made watches. And Nixon was this great brand, is a great brand, 25 plus years. And they had to survive an exogenous sort of shock to their whole category. They made watches, and for the first 15 years, there was nothing called an Apple Watch. And then that launched, and 5 years after launching, an Apple Watch was over 50% of all watch sales globally. And everybody who looked like Nixon, it's not just Nixon, suffered this big disruption in the marketplace. And when Nixon called me to come aboard, they had been that shock had happened a few years before, and it had been a down market for everybody for many years who looked like them. And so I was brought in to try and reinvigorate the selling, especially the wholesale side of the business, which probably took the biggest shock. The D2C side had seen some natural lift because that was just the trend from consumers, but we had to reinvigorate this wholesale side. And yeah, when I got there and just had seen it had been such a tough road, I started with data, right? So what is the market rate of this shock? How down are other people like us? How down are our retailers who we're leaning on? Are we matching their performance? Are we beating it? Are we below it? I also inherited this broad sales force across North America and even into international spaces. And so I had to look at each territory and compare to the numbers. So I started with external data, something you might pull from formerly NPD or Circana to understand the market. I looked internally at how each region was performing compared to that data, sort of established a class average perspective and made my assessment. And what the result of that work was, we needed to make some changes. So first was, did we have the right people? Did they have the right attitude? Were they meeting the opportunity that was there? And while it had been a down market, there was still a lot of sales. This was still a great brand and still a great category. So long story short, we changed out about 50% of the sales force as gracefully as we could, thanked the people who were the wrong fit and replaced them with people who were more energized about the opportunity ahead. I pulled every string I could inside the company to get the existing sales team a better situation. I got them more commission. I put a bonus plan in place that they hadn't had. So now, while it was down market for them, they could make more per every dollar sold. And so I really laid out in front of them, here's the opportunity. I'm getting you more than we've ever given you. Then I started measuring who rose to that occasion and just tried to reshake the whole energy around the sales effort. And, the end result is, unbeknownst to any of us, right as I was going through this process of rebuilding the team and the way we approach the market, the pandemic hit. And so, we all, if you think back to the very beginning of the pandemic, that was real scary, right? Everything stopped for a few months. But quickly after, everybody got those checks and the money started flowing into consumer goods space. And the great thing there was we had built this new foundation just in time for this shock of the pandemic and the rebound behind it to really capture all the opportunities. So we went from years down to rebounding really strong. And what I'm most proud of is I know we got, for the next few years, while the business ran up and up and up to the right, we got every opportunity we could because we had the right team in place and we'd used a lot of data to get them there.
That's fantastic. Wow, what a great example. And thank you for those details. And I think for the audience listening there, at times the story that you want to tell has to come from data. You may have a lot of different hypotheses and leadership lessons that, of course, are at times needed and evergreen, but of course, it has to begin from data. So I really like that approach. There's a lot to unpack there of even going to the external data and then having the internal data and looking at, okay, well, what are the people that are performing and how do we just, change the attitude overall? Because I can understand, like, if a competitor like Apple comes in the new market and then, there can be that perception of resignation, but you gotta persevere. So I think you did a fantastic job and, used innovation and data to really help you. So that's great.
Yeah.
And, your experience, as I understand, spans over various consumer goods and, different companies that you worked with. What are some key challenges that our audience can learn from, like some that are common across these industries when it comes to digital transformation as such?
Yeah, so my career really started in sort of the action sports space. We could call it a lifestyle consumer good. Now I work for this party game company. Along the way, I've mentored, handfuls of businesses that are touching a lot of different spaces, but they're all sort of discretionary consumer goods. And I think the biggest challenge, and it's a cliche thing to say, is to align with that customer. You always want to put the customer first. And we all say it, and I don't know that we all always do it that well. If I think of an example, I've seen a lot of companies and brands try and tell the customer where to shop. We make more margin on Amazon, so we want them to show up on Amazon. We make more margin in our store. We want them to show up at our physical store. And I know as a consumer, I don't want to be told where to go. I want to be met where it's most convenient and easiest for me. So, in this example, I would say, I heard somebody talk about, they called it a SAFA approach, a SAFA, start anywhere, finish anywhere. And so in my companies today, and when I'm advising young businesses, I like that perspective. I don't care as a consumer where you start, and I really don't care where you finish. I just want to meet you where it's easy for you to see my brand, understand our story, and make a decision. And I think the more we can think through that sort of lens, the better off we're all going to do. And the challenges are, you might have a preference to steer them one way or the other, but you got to break down that sort of thinking and think through the customer's eyes first.
Love it. And I think this applies across so many industries, including when we design certain applications. We have the approach of the user centricity. So like user has to be in the center. In fact, we do this exercise where we come up with the empathy map of that persona. And when we're designing a software application, also the interface of it, we really have to think about what are the pain points of the user and always keep them in mind. Because see, one way is to be able to talk to the user, but that's not always possible. And if it's not possible, then the next best thing is to, become present to all of those emotions that the customer is feeling. And then you'll be able to empathize and, you activate those mirror neurons. And then what comes from your actions or in your words is, what the customer wants. So I think that's spot on. And I like how you described that. That is one thing that none of the consumer goods should forget, always keeping the customer, in their thoughts, right at the center, and not caring about steering them in a certain direction just to maximize the profits. Of course, to be a going concern, it's important. And a lot of times, I'm about to go to Barcelona, and Priceline always says, okay, well, book it on the app itself. Then you get an extra discount. This is a mobile only deal. And I'm like, okay, well, but I'm doing all my planning on my Mac. So, and I want to be on the go, be able to book it through the app as well. But I get it. This is something that, across the industries definitely applies.
It reminds me of I have 3 young daughters and a wife, and we bought a bunch of shoes from a brand that we like, called Vans. And I got a nice incentive. They said, thanks for spending however many hundreds of dollars. Here's a coupon for 25% off your next round of purchases. And look, they're little kids. We buy shoes frequently, but I had to go to their store to spend it. And they have a much broader offering on their website. I just want to buy from behind my computer on my lunch break. I don't want to drive to the store. But if I do, they don't have what I want. And it was like they were jamming me into a channel I didn't want to go to. And I always thought, that's not a great consumer. They would have got more money out of me if they just let me check out online than trying to push me into their stores. Probably because they had 2 owners of the P&Ls and they were trying to drive traffic here. Yeah, so.
Got it. And definitely didn't think about that experience for the customer. So definitely, it's, a lot to learn there. Well, awesome. So, it's about data, of course. And in today's data-rich environment, how can data analytics be leveraged for strategic decision-making in the consumer goods industry? What do you think?
Yeah, great question, right? The industry has been talking about big data forever. And actually, I think what we're finding in this modern era is the companies with the data are the ones who still have all the potential if you look at the big companies, there's lots of talk about AI and valuations, but the AI only works when you have all the data, right? And it's always been, you have the data, but what do you do with it? How do you use it? So I think you have to rely on data wherever you can. A lot of these decisions we make when running a business are a balance of art and science, but you better get the science part right. Because if you have access to the data and you can test certain hypotheses and validate them, it's so valuable to start there before you layer the sort of consumer mindset, maybe the art side of it, as I'm talking about. And for me, the biggest thing, one of the biggest wins over the last few years has been using a lot of data visualization. Whether I'm presenting internally, if we have an all hands meeting and I've got a company where there's people in different segments of the company and they don't always know exactly what the other side's doing entirely, and I can show that to them in a picture, it just is different than them hearing me say a number or seeing a list, or definitely not an Excel spreadsheet. When I put a chart and it looks like this, they understand what that means. And so whether that's an internal presentation or I'm going to one of our biggest customers saying, here's the trends in the category, and here's our top 5 ranking in products, and they can see, is it the biggest one is one this big and two is this big, it drops a lot, or are they pretty close? Like, the visualization, I think, is just so much better understood by so many people that's a big one for me. I'm always trying to take our data, slice it up the right way, now present it in a concise visualization. And if you want to know more and you want to go deeper, you can dive back into it. But let's get the story told in a quick picture and share that around so everybody's at that high level, up to speed with what's going on across the business.
Absolutely. And I think, it's just so important having that dashboard of, how things are going. I mean, everybody has KPIs. Every organization has, these numbers that they try to maximize, or even interactions with, the consumers. What are those positive interactions? Even the customer sentiment on social media. And there's so many other tools that help you do that. And that's why I think there's a huge push, and not just now, but it has been for the last decade in, having these dashboards. So I think that's really, really important. I like that. So when you're telling these stories and showing pictures, obviously that helps you influence and help everybody understand that grand vision. But how do you foster a culture within teams that encourages the adoption of new technologies? Like, there may be these new processes and, new tools, new applications. I feel like that's always a challenge to, bring about that big of a change.
Yeah, so that's a good one. I think the answer is always starting by trying to lead by example. And the more of these hairs over here that turn gray and the dark ones turn grayer, the harder it is for me to feel like I'm up on everything and up to speed. But I do think sharpening your own tool set is really important. I leverage my network a lot. I always feel like I got a little imposter syndrome. I think a lot of us do. And you go, my peer at the other company knows exactly what he's doing or what she's doing. I'm over here. What do they know that I don't know? And the great thing is when you have a good network and you have a culture of sharing, you can find out. And of course, we all find out nobody necessarily knows everything, and they're not so different than you. But every once in a while, they found a tool that you didn't know about, or they have a strategy that you didn't know about, or I'm educating them on something we're doing. So I start with myself. Am I sharpening my tool set? Am I staying abreast of best practices? Maybe are you really playing with AI? I hope everybody's playing with AI every day. It's just going to be so valuable. And then I look at my team and I ask them directly, how do you stay engaged with what the marketplace is doing? How do you understand how tools are evolving? Like, I don't want to set anybody up in my company with so much work that they have to spend 100% of their time heads down. I need them to have at least 10% of their time open to talking to peers, talking to vendors. Take that vendor pitch. We all get blasted on LinkedIn all day, 1,000 vendors, right? They're really, they could be obstructive. You ignore them all, but every once in a while you got to take one to see what they're really offering. And that's what I do. And I encourage my team to do the same. And I ask them about it, proactively say, what are you doing this quarter, this month to better your understanding of the marketplace, what's changing? So that's how I go about it.
Love it. I like that. Every now and then, take that vendor pitch, I've learned so much as well, just like that. And another avenue that I use is interviewing people. I'm always looking for great people. So why not continue to, interview people, because they come up with fresh ideas and, topics. And I think the other thing that I've seen in a lot of other successful companies do is Kaizen. So like at a set interval, they run a Kaizen, which is a process improvement exercise. Like the way that you're doing something, you have to have some percentage of improvement in, any parameter that you pick, whether it is at a manufacturing plant, then how could you reduce that time that it takes for picking a particular material? Or, how can you maybe rearrange some things? Or how could you make the report a little bit better, that it's more comprehensible? So I think definitely something that I would, say that it's been very important to foster that culture within the teams, to encourage them, in adopting new technologies and talking to people and, trying things. And that's what really innovation is, because if we stay set in our own ways and just continue to do things, what has worked, just continue with that. I think there's going to come a point when it's going to stop working, and then it's going to be too late. So you got to continue to experiment, and obviously building a culture that encourages that is very important. I like that 10 to 20% of the time, try doing something other than your everyday responsibilities.
Yeah, I always say we could all show up and answer 8 hours of email and think we're doing our job, but there's so much stuff you have to be doing outside of that. And I think what we're both talking about is setting aside intentional time for improvement. The one other thing I want to add is when I highly encourage, especially younger people who are earlier in their career, but it doesn't stop there. You got to do it your whole career, is go set up these informational interviews. Find somebody who you think is 2 steps ahead of you or is killing it. They have some aspect of life figured out. It might be business, or it might just be how they are with their family, but go set an intention to go have a conversation with them, take them to coffee, take them to lunch, ask them who they are, how they do what they do, and you're going to learn. If you just do that over time, you're going to learn so much. You're going to make friends in higher places, and you're going to build that network that you can leverage when you need it. I've got a problem I've got to solve. Wait, I can call this guy who I took to lunch. I'm thinking through my own mind 2 years ago, who knows, who's been down this road. He can help me. So I like that as well.
Absolutely. I think that's, in fact, the best ways to learn. Whatever it is that you want to learn or have a breakthrough in, just find an expert. And, people are more willing than at times we give them credit to coach you. And I think that can be an important way to, continue to learn from people that are experts in that particular field. So I'm really, in agreement with you that that's something that needs to be fostered and cultivated in the culture. What about the legacy IT systems? I've heard a lot about those. We've done some projects where, we would modernize applications. Like, you won't even believe there are, applications that we find when we go into an organization trying to help them with digital transformation that were built like in 2008. Like, imagine that, and still used today. And I mean, those applications just barely work. And this is not even the worst example. I know that in many other companies, there may be applications that are built way back when, and they look like Windows 95, and, they don't have a good interface. And today, with, all of the things that we could do, I mean, it is, but the question comes, like, how do you approach this challenge of modernizing these systems while minimizing disruptions to the ongoing operations? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think you're like cribbing from my notes, because I've lived through the 12-year-old ERP system that we couldn't even update because there was no new iteration of it. We just had to keep patching it together for years. I think I've been through some big system overhauls, and I think, so first of all, how do you avoid disruption? Recognize you can't avoid all disruption. Embrace some disruption. And I think if you're a young company, the first thing you have to do is build in some redundancy. I'm at a young and quickly growing company today, right? There weren't a lot of systems in place. We put our first inventory management system in place. We were using Monday.com. We're just layering in our sort of technological solutions to support the business getting out of this Google Sheets phase and into a more, contemporary and system supported approach. So build some redundancy in there. Make sure your team, multiple people, know how to operate these systems and can manage them. Then as you mature, I go back to challenge yourself to move forward and take a little pain in the short term for a longer term gain. And for me, again, I'll go back to, I'm going to keep saying it apparently, but I look at my network and I ask, what else is going on out there in the market? Who's made that transition to a new platform that really adds value? I think in my career, one thing I've prided myself on is finding new tools to do a job that's been being done for 20 years, but finding something new to approach it. And they're usually tech solutions. And a lot of times I'm finding a vendor and saying, hey, your tool does 80% of what I want to do. Can you build it to add that next 20%? Because if you do, I'm going to use it, and I'm going to tell all my friends who do similar work how great it is and help you win some more customers. And I've pushed a couple of my partners to add those extra layers of development that have really empowered me and my team to do good work. So I'm not the most technologically sophisticated person, but finding the techs that work for you can be really valuable and game-changing. So just have the mindset that you got to layer on some new tech. You've got to turn over old tech. And yeah, there's short-term pain, but on the other side are some really good things.
Love it. Yeah, absolutely. I think someone I often find has to become this sponsor. That helps a lot as well, where I mean, there's going to be challenges, and there's going to be, times when you'd be like, oh, well, is this really possible? And often what I like to also do is, crawl, walk, run, like have, some low hanging fruit and get some wins that helps you gain that momentum. So I think striking that balance is just, so important.
Well, can I add to? Sorry, I'm talking. I'll add one last thought, which is there are so many great tools that I do think you also have to be a little picky, right? Because anybody sitting in a position as an operator wants to do 20 things. There's a tool that will suit each one, but you can't do 20 things at once. But you need to pick your 3 or 4 that really matter, that weight the most impact on your business, and make the decisions there, and understand that you're going to there might be a nice shiny object that's going to improve that last 10 or 15% of your overall job scope, but you need to focus on the 30 to 40% impact, not the 10 or 5 to 10 at the end. So just pick your battles, pick your tools, and do a few of them really well rather than trying to do them all.
Absolutely. Bite-sized chunks. So love it. What about the role of automation and digital technologies in the future of manufacturing of consumer goods? Like, how, and maybe give your example on how you're, creating these so fun games.
Yeah, well, a quick story on DSS Games, the name and where the first game came from. The 2 founders are brothers, young guys, and their dad has helped a little or a lot. And they were in college, and their dad called and he said, I'm in this store. And a lot of us would recognize the store. Maybe, I don't know, should I say their name? Yeah, Urban Outfitters. He calls his son, he goes, I'm in this store and everything here looks like it's for people who are drunk, stoned, or stupid. And he goes, that would be a fun idea for a book. He was had a business where he had made books before. And his son goes, no, that could be a game. Let's make it a game. And that's where they came up with this idea of a game called Drunk, Stoned, or Stupid. And it was a fun party game. And thus, as we've grown and added more games, DSS is our title. So yeah, we make really fun games. We've got family-friendly stuff. We've got couples stuff. We've got kind of maybe anywhere from playing with your kids or just playing at a college party. That's what we do, and we do it well. And I think we think about this question about where's automation and digital improvement lie for us. And so some of it's, as a young company, we're layering in new techs. It reminds me of a question I always ask on a personal level. I like sitting around with my friends and thinking about what are we doing today that we're going to regret when we're older? Maybe our grandparents or our parents, they smoked when they were pregnant, I always think, or they didn't have seat belts or something. And I'm like, what is it for us that we're doing? Are we eating too much meat? Or is plastic too many places? Are we spending too much time on screens? We're going to look back and say, I can't believe we used to do that. And then I think about our businesses and our operations and the tech we use or don't use today. And I think the same question. And the one that jumps out is just AI. Of course, it's so buzzy right now, but the world is going to be really different in 2, 3, 5 years, let alone 10. And I'm constantly thinking about where and how we can implement AI to help us. And I don't want to be a laggard in that area. We may not be the first ones to test everything, but I want to be on top of it. And to be honest, a lot of us had machine learning available to us for years. And were we using it? I don't know. We probably weren't using it to its fullest potential. So I'm really excited where we're going. I don't know the answer, but I think it's just thinking about it every day and challenging yourself to move forward and not get stuck in the systems you're using today forever, right?
Beautiful. Yeah. Challenge yourself every day and, try to think about how, a lot of these tools and automation and digital technologies like AI can help your business. So in consumer goods as well, I think there are so many different use cases. Of course, you could use more transparency and forecast any disruptions that may happen in your sort of supply chain. You could forecast the demand of certain products by entering the data, and then also maybe with the calendar, maybe even weather. But I think the world is definitely changing. And so I think there are lots of different use cases that we can talk about within, automation and AI and digital technologies. But one that doesn't often get enough attention is the personalized experiences. How do you incorporate technology to enhance that customer engagement and tailor even your products and services for to individual preferences?
Yeah, I mean, there again, it's funny. I think of your pizza example downstairs, and like they can't afford the quant from Brown or MIT to, tell them what pizza's best, but there might be some software subscription AI product that's going to really help them do some optimization soon. And it's probably out there already. So for us, for consumer engagement, that's the answer. The earlier question was, where do these technologies help your business? It's like, where don't they help? Every part of the business, whether it's marketing, sales, product development, supply chain, can all be benefited. There's areas for improvements all over. So for me, for consumer engagement, I think about how important CRM could be. I've honestly been at businesses that never really fully utilize a CRM, but like, do we have a CRM that keeps track of our customers and understands who they are, where they are, what they respond to? And even at businesses that were, maybe sub 100 million, but not too far off, that these technologies weren't even being used and they were available. And now I think with an AI layer built on, I just think you could get such rich consumer data and insights that you've got to use that to improve the business. I have friends in luxury and consumer goods who are spending a lot of time thinking about this. What is the future? And especially when you get into luxury, they have such a clienteling sort of environment. They know who you are when you walk in because they've worked with you over the last 5 years to make sure you have the right suit for your podcast today, Arvind. But like, if that rep leaves, if there's a CRM, they keep some of the information. Now you've lost your personal connection. But how do you keep that great personal connection, make it feel like it's the same person, whether they're coming to you via phone, email, text message, or it physically in a store? Like, I think that's all a merger of these technologies and just utilizing even some of what exists today. Because again, I think we're probably not all utilizing the tools we have at our disposal to their maximum potential yet.
Totally. Yeah, I mean, one example comes to mind. We did an app for Jaguar and Land Rover, JLR, where in the store, when you walk in, it automatically, like if you have the My Garage application, it syncs, with the CRM and updates the person on the floor that such and such person has arrived, and you could greet them with their name and know their history. I mean, even when I fly, American Airlines always, knows that we thank you for your business. Thank you for being, member and Executive Platinum Pro and all of that good stuff.
We got you that aisle seat you like because we know you don't like the window. Like, I mean, there's so many little things that, as long as it's not creepy, right? We don't want them to be creepy. But yeah, like that, just make it easier on me as a consumer, right? Show me something that matters to me. If it's an ad, show me something that I'm going to respond to or be interested in. Don't waste my time and get me to Midas. I'm from a sales background. I always say I like to be sold. Tell me why I need this thing in my life, why it's going to change and make my life better. I don't care if it's an eye mask, it's a book, it's a non-alcoholic mocktail. Like, I don't know. There's so many things that I'm curious about, but just give me stuff I'm interested in. Don't waste my time showing me, an ad for a new set of tires on my truck that I don't need because my tires are going to last me another 3 years, right? Make my life easier, please, as a consumer.
Totally. Well, great. This is fantastic. Now, looking at the future of all of these amazing technologies, emerging technologies, and I guess the digital transformation journey, for a lot of the consumer goods companies, what are some of the biggest challenges? And I guess also, if you want to juxtapose those with the most promising opportunities in this space.
I think the answer to this question is not that sexy. It's not the 5 years down the road. What is AI doing for us with all this automation and whatever? I think when I'm an operator, I'm very proud of being in these companies, running these companies, working on hard problems every day. And I just look at all the little improvements we can make today. How do we get better forecasting? Just like you said it, a little bit better forecasting goes a long way. It reduces your liability when you got to buy a lot of product. My company, today, these party games are huge at the holiday. And that means a couple months ago, we had to make a massive decision on what we're going to buy, which is made overseas. It takes a while to get here. It's going to hit our warehouse. And then we really hope it all sells, right? And we're pretty good at it. But being even a little better would mean a lot to us. So I think forecasting is important. We all want to understand that consumer's journey and experience and have exceptional articulation about what are they doing? What's triggering them? What's turning them on? What's turning them off? Where did we lose them? Why? And I think there's better tools coming fast to help us understand that, even with the loss of cookies that we're all probably a little upset about is like there's going to be solutions to get around that. And then I go back to what we talked about earlier, pricing elasticity. Like how elastic or inelastic is the price? Working with these young brands who are standing up a new product as a mentor, and they go, one is a great brand called Park It Movement. They made the Yeti cooler of beach chairs, right? The coolest chair. And this guy, Steven, who founded the business, had to go to market and say, what's the right price for my chair? And, it's not a cheap chair. It's a few $100s, like for a beach chair, but he's built an exceptional product. And thankfully for him, he was willing to try that price, but he doesn't know, could he have been $20 more? What would have happened if he was $20 less? I see founders, especially early on in life, they tend to discount their value in their product and undershoot it. And I always am pushing them to push the threshold up. But again, if you have a really good tool to measure it and you test left and right, a couple dollars here, $5 left or right, you're going to find the sweet spot. And that's some battle that we're all the consumer good brands are always facing and trying to get right. And it's not a perfect science, but we could use more science supporting it. So that's what I think about. All those little wins that are close by that'll have an impact today and tomorrow. We'll worry about the 2 to 5 year out stuff as we build towards that.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I like how, you always stay up to date by helping young entrepreneurs and younger companies, in this space. So I think the last question that I'd have is, what advice do you have for, future entrepreneurs and leaders, that are in this space of consumer goods industry based on your own experiences and lessons that you've learned along the way?
Yeah, I think as we talked about, I think allocating a little time to stay sharp and sharpen your tools, I should say, and like get out of just heads down operation. It's really hard to do when you're the lead entrepreneur, whether it's a young business or even a mature business. So when it's your business, it's hard not to be in the weeds all day, every day. And you just have to find time to have an offsite meeting, have a coffee with a peer in another space, go to a conference once in a while. There's some good stuff. There's a lot of junk at conferences sometimes, but even the bad ones, you still have some really good takeaways, and the good ones are great. So setting that side of time, I think building a network and supporting each other, being somebody who's willing to share and open up and share, hey, here's my pain points and here's what's going really well for us with your peer set is important. Even in my industry, actually, some of our direct competitors, we're quite collegial, and you do share notes in a lot of ways. And that's pretty unique where we are today in this game space. And I thank those peer sets for being that way. And then if you're managing a business, the standard advice from me is always just don't be afraid to make a hard decision. I think I've seen so many people hesitate to try a different, vendor partner because they're not in love with the one they have, or unfortunately not be willing to walk away from an employee who isn't really meeting the standards that they have and need. I think sometimes you have to have those hard conversations that people can want to shy away from because they are hard, but you'll always be so happier on the other side of it when you make the tough decision. Do it with professionalism and empathy, but get to the other side of it and get moving, because you're going to have to make thousands of decisions every week when you're an entrepreneur, and you're not going to get them all right. So get that out of your mind that you're going to get it all right, and just try and get 60% right, but keep moving. That's I guess the last part.
I love that advice. And, that reminds me of this quote. I think it's from Tim Ferriss. Your success is determined by the number of difficult conversations you have every day.
1,000%.
I mean, I think, I read this book in like 12 years ago, and sometimes I go back to those books and read it again. And I think that's one thing that's stuck with me, So every day I try to just have, difficult conversations. But like you said, as long as you are kind about it, you empathize, and, you make sure that you're doing it in, keeping everyone's interests in mind as well. But ultimately you have to take those hard decisions of, letting go of somebody who's not working out if it's not a good fit, because you're also helping that person. They're probably not happy with the way that they're performing either, or like you said, like changing the vendor, or sometimes for young entrepreneurs, like pivoting. Of course you don't want to be pivot, but there is such a thing where you fall too much in love with that one direction, and then you almost just are too hesitant to pivot, even though you're seeing that data. And that ties back to what you said earlier, having that network, because we're all really the worst problem solvers when it comes to us, but we're really good when it comes to other people. And that's why if you could be a little bit vulnerable and share with your peers, colleagues, or that support network that you build around you, I think they can more often point those obvious things that you're just not able to see because of some of your biases.
Yeah. The last thing I'll add, I guess, to that hard conversation comment is you can have a hard conversation that's a smaller conversation earlier and avoid something more catastrophic down the road. And I see a lot of times, and I'm guilty of it. I'm speaking from the heart here. This is a nuisance. I'm not going to deal with it now. And then the nuisance is catastrophic 3 months later. And you're like, why didn't if I just would have said the hard thing, then we could have fixed it and moved on. And I encourage people to do that all the time. But yeah.
Wow. Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Charlie. This was a great conversation. And we touched on entrepreneurship, digital transformation, around consumer goods industry, and from navigating complex sales landscapes to fostering the next generation of entrepreneurs. Well, thank you again. It's clear that your passion extends far beyond just numbers. You're driven by growth, innovation, and in fact, even giving back to the community and paying it forward. So thank you for that. For our listeners, remember, success isn't just about driving sales. It's about fostering a culture of innovation, building strong partnerships, and championing the future. Thanks again, Charlie, for sharing your experience and insights. And everyone, if you enjoyed this conversation and you want to hear more thought leaders, stay tuned. We'll be back soon with another inspiring guest. Until next time, this is your host, Arvind Sarin. Goodbye.
Thank you.